What is up, guys? Lord Nick here, bringing you another One Piece related video. First video since the move, guys. First video in the new apartment. Um, it's gonna be the new setup. Currently, it's looking a little iffish if I'll be able to make a lot of videos this year, but I did want to start off by making a Rebecca update. I love Rebecca. If you guys haven't been able to tell, I've made a lot of Rebecca videos. I really like Rebecca, and I'm constantly adapting and changing my deck, trying to get the best feel for her. Now, my previous more aggressive Rebecca build was very fun. I think that it is still missing some pieces to be very good. Though next set, when we get Sai added to it, who's a 3-drop 6k attacker, there might be more reason to lean towards that. But instead, I've moved towards a little bit more of a standardized Rebecca build with my own little tweaks and twists on it to what I need for my own standard meta. So here where I play, I run into a ton of Anels, which means I need more aggressive early clear and attack power. So being able to play an early Rebecca to clear a 3-drop is more impactful, so I've added in 2 Kobys for that reason alone. If I hit him off of a Rebecca search and he goes into trash, not that big it's not that big a deal. Same thing with Kyros. So instead of 4 Kyroses, we have 2 Kobys, and that's just because Koby will hit higher. Now, the -1 trash 1 from hand does sound pretty bad, except for the fact that we're gaining 2 cards a turn. So it's really just puts us back on par with even with our opponent, except we're also removing their turn and getting tempo for us. So it's pretty good for us overall. Secondly, we can get more than 2 cards a turn pretty consistently with this deck. So it's not actually that big of a deal, and if we actually take a little bit of damage early, it becomes less of a big deal. This build is easily able to just start being like, oh, 7-drop mom? Well, yeah, don't, as long as you don't just draw absolute terrible hand, which is all like 4 and 5 cost ups and no 2Ks in hand, you can actually just take some early damage from your opponent, set up a board state to where it becomes difficult for them to clear things, and by the time that they want to Thunderbolt a blocker out of the way, it would get rid of their last life, which can make NL really, it makes it really hard for NL. Now, into Sokka, we can play this a little slower. We have just as much removal as him. Our late game big board state isn't going to be as good as his, but our removal state is going to be just about as even as his. So, if not better. And we have better ways of gaining card. We gain card advantage, whereas he gets card selection. So, we get almost as much selection as him, but we actually gain extra cards earlier, as long as we keep forcing him to have to answer things while still swinging into him. So if we're forcing him to have to use his Rebecca's to get answers again, he's not getting 2Ks back, which makes him much more susceptible to our attacks. So because we can redevelop ours, and we don't have to worry about getting our 2Ks back as much, because we can put them back in our deck and dig them back out, because we can dig through the deck much faster. And part of the reason of that is because we run 4 Sabos, whereas most Sokkas don't run any Sabos, and some of them may run 2. But this allows us to dig 2 cards deep, with the play on us, and develop it so that he can't wipe our board, which really throws off his tempo. So this card alone is just what can net us it, and doing multiple Sabo after Sabo turns can really disrupt a Sokka's ability to deal with us. And then we have Suleiman. Suleiman, I found, has been replacing my Orlumbuses. I was running 4 Orlumbuses originally, and I was running this much closer to a deck list I saw online for a control one. The problem I was having was sticking an Orlumbus felt very awkward, because Orlumbus does require you to have an additional character that you want to get rid of, or have a Kyros already developed, or have a Sabo that you can play so that you don't have to. But if you're playing a Sabo onto a turn that you're also playing an Orlumbus, you're not using Orlumbus that turn. You might play an Orlumbus, hope he survives, drop a Sabo the next turn, but you're taking multiple turns to set up and get removal, whereas Sokka just removes on the turn that he sets up on. So to kind of match that, we added in Suleiman. He has the potential to do a -4 on a 1 character. Yes, he does have to get an attack off on his turn to be able to do that, so it makes you a little bit more reliant on Colosseum, but and it requires them to have arrested, so that's kind of a little bit rough. But he is recurable with Rebecca, and there are times where that recursion does come in, it does matter. But the bigger thing which is really odd to think about, is that his trash one card from the top of your deck is so much more impactful in this list than anything else. So being able to trash cards, so like that's why Orlumbus is good, right? He trashes 2 cards, and allows you to get deeper into the deck. But I was finding it difficult just because the 4-cost investment for him, it was just difficult to find the spot for him. And oftentimes, if I needed 4, Hina was the option. And I'd almost always end up with a Hina in hand at some point. And so a Hina to get the 4 that turn was just a better play. But I still wanted something that could get more 4. So I didn't want too much of it. So instead of 4 Olumbuses, we went down to 2 Suleiman, which can be, at best case scenario, is an Olympus on the turn he comes out. Otherwise, he's just a -2. But he still gives us trash, and that's the thing that we needed. Like, this deck has some things that trash. Kyros trashes cards. Suleiman trashes cards. Sabo digs and trashes cards. Rebecca digs and trashes cards. Our ability digs and trashes cards. So the faster we can get our deck down to like 10, 15 cards, the faster we can start putting the cards that we need back so that we can start getting those drawn into our hand. It also means that we can run less Luffys, because you run 7 Luffys, or you run 3 of the 7-drop Luffys, because you don't need 4 of them now. We have Moncherie that puts cards back. We have Rob Lucci that puts cards back. So you don't need the Luffy to keep you from falling into just completely out of repair. And Luffy is kind of more of a win more scenario, and sometimes it's just a big removal on a stick. So if he is a big removal, that's pretty great. The situations where Suleiman is worse than Orlumbus would be in a situation where we're trying to develop a Luffy and use like a Hound Blaze to remove a big character so that Luffy can just swing in and take stuff out. Yeah, our Suleiman's only going to get rid of -2 cost on something opposed to the 4 that Orlumbus is, so our range is lower. But oftentimes, it still doesn't really matter. Most blockers are 4 and under right now, so having the Suleiman is actually just the number we need. 2 is kind of that hot spot we need to remove those sticky or annoying blockers in that range. And then the other card that we've replaced Orlumbus with is the Haute Couture Patchwork. And the reason why we've replaced it is this is essentially our Great Eruption. But it is a bit more versatile, opposed to Great Eruption where you get draw power, which we don't need, right? Rebecca is our draw power. So yes, it costs 1, but so does Great Eruption. So to get our draw power is off of our hero power. And we can get Patchwork off of it. And Patchwork then is a -3 opposed to a -2, so slightly better. And on top of that, if there is a 0 cost on our opponent's turn, on our opponent's field that is tapped, we can just put it to where it can't refresh. So, for instance, let's say against an aggro deck, say they have like a Rush Zoro that came out, and we have a Suleiman, and we need to be able to pop a 4-cost blocker that they have for whatever reason, or whatever. Say they have a 5-cost Luffy, and we need to pop the 5-cost Luffy. Well, what we can actually, and so we just don't have the removal. Well, if we have this, we can attack with the Suleiman, get a -2 on that Luffy, and we can do this card onto that 5-drop, and the 5-drop can't refresh, so he's losing his 5-drop. Suleiman can also swing into the Zoro and clear the Zoro at that point. And that's all for maybe 2 Dawn. Let's say we have this in hand and we have the Suleiman. That's 2 Dawn at minimum invested to do that. We could do maybe 3 Dawn if we want to make it, or I would say 4 Dawn, so that so it's 3 Dawn on the Suleiman, make him a 7k swinging at the Zoro, so he has to use a 2k and a 1k or a Rad Beam just to save the Zoro. And then we can lock down the Luffy, so that the Luffy is just useless. He still has it for later, but it's stuck there. He can't do anything with it. And that is often enough to buy us the turn that we need to start setting up again. So it gives us time to set up, start building other stuff. Or we could just put it on the Zoro and wipe the Zoro with like a Kyros. Or we could do that lockdown with the Suleiman and the Patchwork and drop a Koby and kill the Zoro. Like, it opens up so much more avenues of what we can do by just either locking something out or giving us more to get bigger cost things out of the way. And the last big addition that I've made to this deck, and outside of adding the Hinas in now, which I now own the Hinas, so I'm testing with it more. So like most of my lists are based off of what I can test with cards that I have. I've managed to pick up a full Great Eruption and Hina set. I'm playing more Sokka, but I really like Rebecca. The only other addition I've really made was I'd previously played with Barrier, which was our Black Rad Beam basically. Sorry for the coughing, guys. I'm a little bit sick. But in place of that, Dragon Claw is now the Dressrosa Shockwave. And while it has a bigger limiter of when you can actually kill something, you could kill something that is much bigger and it doesn't have to be active. Whereas Shockwave had to be active. There's no way to play around Dragon Claw other than if they some reason have a tech card that takes cards out of our trash. Which there is a card in black that does that. But like, it's very rare that somebody's going to have a tech card to try to play around the Dragon Claw. And if they're investing 3 Dawn to stop us from being able to KO their character, that's 3 less Dawn we have to worry about them swinging at our face. But either way, Dragon Claw gives us a plus 4k, which is huge, and it allows us to KO. Plus, I was originally avoiding running a ton of events in Rebecca because, hey, our Rebecca is a reanimator, right? We have Moncherie, we have Rebecca's, this is how we get value back. But you don't need everything to be a reanimator. Like everything in this list basically can be reanimated other than the Moncheries, the one-legged soldiers, the Rebeccas. Everything else can get hit by Rebecca, which is pretty good. And most of it can be hit by Moncherie, which is pretty good. So we don't need more things that can be hit. These are the things we need. So you just limit it down to the things you need. You get to them as soon as possible, and then everything else is tech cards, right? Well, these tech cards also mean more value when they're in your life. We don't have a lot of things that tap down my Rebecca. The only thing that will tap my Rebecca is Kyros. So if that's the case, Truno is almost always online. Truno KOs a 5-cost or less. That's really good out of life. Out of life, we get rid of a 3k. Out of life, we get rid of anything equal to their life. So if I haven't started swinging at them and they're a 1-color leader, hey, guess what? That's a 5 and under for free. Draw 2, trash 1, hand filter, and the same thing we were talking about. What this deck needs is the ability to fill up your trash as fast as you can. So being able to get extra cards into your trash is good. Same thing with Con Gun out of life. If I don't see a very, I only really need 1 Con Gun. And even at that, if I'm getting to the point that my deck is down to 10 cards, I can put the Con Guns there and just keep digging every turn until I can get back to the Con Guns and win. Usually that that setup happens in the mid game. So we're in a scenario here where, okay, we have our consistency built. This is really all we need for winning as long as we see certain cards. So it's just about digging to those cards and getting other removal pieces and more support pieces. So I've had to kind of change my ideology of like trying to be the patchwork for everything and have the patchwork for just consistency. Rebecca is just as consistent as Sokka. It can be just as consistent as Sokka. And to a degree, it can be even more so because I have the ability to stack my deck and I have the ability to get to those cards. Whereas Sokka, this is a cost. You just need stuff in your trash to be able to play it. But you're never really going to get back to those cards. Whereas with Rebecca, I'm getting back to those cards. I'm digging way deeper than Sokka can, and I can get there way faster than he can. And I'll leave the stuff I don't need in the trash, and then I'll start stacking them towards to keep them at the bottom so that the stuff I need gets pushed up farther. So hopefully you guys enjoy this video. Keep an eye out for later this week. I'm probably going to release a actual gameplay video. This is currently the list that I will be running this whole week at my locals. There is a chance I'll end up on the stream at one of my locals, which will be cool. I mean, there's a small chance. I'm not a very good player, so we'll see. I make a lot of mistakes at my locals, but we'll see. And hopefully, if you guys like this, you leave a like. Maybe you'll subscribe. Leave a comment down below and talk to me about what you're doing with Rebecca, or have any questions about my current build or what you might have in mind. I love to chat down there, and I hope to see you guys in the next video. And until then, I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful day. Bye, guys.